Well, we're going to continue talking about Justin Trudeau today on the podcast. I'm Marcy Markusa. This is Manitoba, and I don't know if I can promise 20 minutes or less to make sense of all of this because there's a lot to make sense of. History has been made in this country as we watch Justin Trudeau resign as leader of the Liberal Party and, of course, saying he will resign as Prime Minister as soon as his successor is named. So what does this look like from a Manitoba point of view? Why don't we start with just some basic analysis? Then we're going to hear from some folks on the streets in Winnipeg, actually at the University of Manitoba specifically. And then we're going to have a partisan panel. So let's begin with hearing from the man himself. So almost 24 hours after he first made it official, a lot of reactions coming in to what Justin Trudeau had to say. So the Prime Minister made an announcement. He will step down, as I mentioned, and he said it's due to growing pressure within his own caucus. Here's a bit of what he said in this press conference.
This country deserves a real choice in the next election, and it has become clear to me that if I'm having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option in that election.
Trudeau also asked the Governor-General to prorogue Parliament, and she has until March 24th. Ryan Tumilty is here, political reporter with the Toronto Star. He joins us often on Tuesdays for Ottawa Report. Good morning.
Good morning.
Did you sleep?
I did some. I mean, I have a 6-month-old, so I never sleep that much.
Fair enough. Big day yesterday. Wow. So it was an emotional day for the Prime Minister. What stood out for you from the press conference itself, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, lots of things were interesting. The location was interesting, of course. Rideau Cottage. That's where Canadians got to know Prime Minister. He talked to the country from those steps for a couple of months during the early days of the pandemic. So that was interesting. I thought it was interesting the way he framed this, that he was eager for this fight, that he was fully prepared to take on Pierre Poilievre, but he knows he can't fight his caucus and Pierre Poilievre at the same time. But not really acknowledging that, the reason he's getting pushback from his caucus is because he has become so unpopular. Not really acknowledging that the winds have changed against him. So I found all of that interesting. I thought it was interesting that the way he is framing this is, him leaving under a caucus revolt, not him leaving because he is incredibly unpopular.
Parliament's now prorogued until March 24th. How will a new Liberal leader be actually chosen? Because from what I can see, and I've been trying to see if they've nailed this down, but I don't see a timeline, right?
No, I mean, there is a process in the Liberal Party constitution, but that is not fit for this purpose. That is a process that envisions maybe a 6-month or a year-long leadership race even. And the Liberals obviously do not have that kind of time. So this is going to be a real challenge, I think, for the party. They're going to have to come up with a quick process. I think probably they have, from today, they have 77 days before Parliament returns. I think they're going to want to have this wrapped up in 60 days, give the new leader at least a little bit of time to get organized before an election. So I suspect in the next couple of days, we'll see what the process is. I think the party board is debating that now and trying to come up with an idea. But I would expect a quick process.
Now, a quick process. So we're expecting they'll have a Liberal leader before, obviously March 24th, which is important because if there's a non-confidence vote, we're going to the polls then. That person becomes the Liberal leader and they also become Prime Minister, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. How are the other parties reacting to all of this? Trudeau's resignation and, of course, the Governor-General proroguing Parliament.
Yeah, I was struck by the resignation announcement yesterday and the way the opposition reacted. Usually in a moment like this, and I think it sort of speaks to our politics, you at least get a, thank you for your service, disagreed on everything, but we have to thank him for what he's done for the country sort of thing. You heard none of that from the Conservative leader or the NDP leader yesterday. It was just immediately moving on to an attack against the Liberal Party more broadly, arguing that anyone who leads this party after Justin Trudeau will be just as bad. It was sort of immediately into campaign mode. They seem to be kind of unfazed by the prorogation. And I think, what we were seeing there is sort of a recognition that they now know the election is on. We know that when the prorogation is ending, all of these opposition parties are going to vote to bring down the government. They've been very clear on that. They're going to have opportunities in that first week. I think the opposition parties are recognizing that the campaign, whoever they're going to have as an opponent, but the campaign is underway.
How quickly does it happen? Like if that happens within days and then off we go, how quickly could we be at the polls?
I think probably, the dates that are being bandied around are May 5th or May 12th.
Okay.
There are, provisions in the Elections Act for how long a campaign has to be, and that's probably what you're looking at. I think a lot depends, sort of a little bit on those first few days back. How quickly does the government just sort of introduce a throne speech and then accept that it has been defeated right away? Mm-hmm. Or do they play it out a little bit? Do they maybe even skip a throne speech altogether? Does the new leader go to the Governor General before the Parliament is even scheduled to come back? These are the sorts of questions, I think, that we don't know yet, but I would suspect early May, Canadians will be casting their ballots.
That's Ryan Tumilty, and my conversation with him, he's from the Toronto Star. Are you all learning to pronounce prorogue and maybe Googling what that actually means? I've been saying this on the podcast of late, and that is because Governor General Mary Simon did grant Justin Trudeau's request to prorogue Parliament until March 24th. What it really means is we're not going to have an election before then, but we're also not going to have the business of government done before then. So that's just something else to talk about out of what Ryan and I were discussing there. CBC's Jim Agapito wanted to find out how some Winnipeggers feel about Trudeau's decision to step down from the Liberal leadership and ultimately as PM. He spoke to some students over at the University of Manitoba.
My name's Eric Hakinen. I feel like he stepped down because of several decisions he made, one of them being the tax that he just removed. I feel like he cannot cooperate and hold that tax accountable against himself, so he's going to step down. He wants someone else to have to re-add that tax and not have that pressure bared away from him. It's not on him.
You're referring to the GST, what's called the GST holiday?
Yeah.
Why do you feel that way?
Because what's the point in doing it when it's people are already taxed so much on their taxes and we're just taking it away for a few months, an experiment, right? So I feel like it doesn't really add any value as inflation's going to go up over time and prices are going to start to rise again.
Victoria Romero's. Well, I think like most Canadians, we've realized it's a very historic moment, regardless of your opinion on our leader. But I think that while this is something that certainly to me doesn't come as a surprise, it's been a long time coming, I think it is a very necessary step in delivering on what Canadians need. And not just in the sense of those who have called for him to resign, but also purely for the fact that over the last couple months there has been a severe lack in the ability of our government to pass any policy, to get any work done because of the filibustering, because of the non-confidence votes, because of the resignation of multiple members of the Liberal Party. So it really says a lot about what happens when there isn't change in a political system that's as dynamic as ours.
My full name is Yusuf Mahmoud. I think it's a good thing. Change is always good. Even if it's sudden, it would be good. Well, I'm kind of neutral. I don't think he had much effect on Canada. He may have not done much to Canada, but hopefully the next president or the next prime minister will do better. So yeah.
I feel like it doesn't impact me as much as more. It would impact my parents more because they deal with more of the taxes, more of the adult things, whereas I'm just starting my first year in university, right?
So do you think that this change will help the Liberals at all in the upcoming election?
I think that it might be a little bit too little too late. While I think it is the right decision, I do think that the leader is one thing, but the policy of the party is another. And if the Liberals aren't able to correct their policy to match what Canadians are now asking for and now need, then regardless of who the leader is, they won't be able to recover.
Okay, say, for example, Victoria, an election was held tomorrow. What would your leanings be?
It's a tricky question. A lot of the party, the three parties, they offer a wide variety of options for students, for young people. As a woman, a racialized woman, someone who identifies as non-binary as well, and a part of the LGBTQ community, I think that I would never vote Conservative. And I don't think that a Pierre Poilievre government would be beneficial for a large majority of the country.
Mostly concerned about the immigration laws and the economy of Canada. Like, I came here since it's a better economy from where I'm coming, so I thought here the job opportunities would be more, would give us more opportunities to succeed in life. So that's my main concern right now. But I think it will get better over time. Well, if it's a conservative government, probably the immigration process would be very hard on me. Like, it will become harder on all immigrants and not just students. So that would mainly affect me, but I think overall if I stick to the rules and move as good as possible, I won't have any issues, even with a conservative government.
Well, there are certain moments where you do need people to come in with formed opinions, and that means that we have a partisan panel next on the podcast to get some deeper analysis of what has happened here. How did Manitoba fare? Is one of the questions that we want to dig into under Justin Trudeau's leadership. What's next, of course, for the Liberal Party, and how are the other two major parties positioned for the 2025 upcoming election? Our partisan panel's here live in Studio 15. Brad Zander is a lawyer and Manitoba representative on the National Constitution Committee for the Federal Conservatives. He's also, interestingly, chair of Manitoba's provincial PC leadership race. Good morning.
Good morning.
So Erin Selby's here too, former provincial NDP cabinet minister of health and education. She was MP for Southdale. She was also part of a group of 5 that challenged Selinger's leadership, which I think is interesting in the context of the feds. And she ran federally for the NDP. She's now director of regulatory affairs at Assiniboine College. Good morning.
Good morning.
And Hannah Mihaichuk-Marshall is back, Liberal campaign manager and voter. She's been involved in past federal campaigns. And of course, her mother was an MLA and an MP for the Liberals. You might recognize the Mihaichuk name. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Marcy. Glad to be here.
All right, I'm going to get you to lean into your mic, Hannah, so we can hear you a little better. All right, one word for how we're all feeling. It's been 24 hours since we heard this news. I'll let you start first, Hannah.
Relief.
Relief, okay.
Optimistic.
Erin's optimistic. Brad.
Hannah took mine, which is interesting that the Conservative and Liberal on this panel are agreeing. Relief.
Are both relieved. So let's dig into why you're relieved. Brad, I'll let you go first.
I think the writing has been on the wall for this for a year, if not 2, and I think it's time to move on from the internal party politics within the Liberal Party, resolve this issue so that the government of Canada, whichever government that is, can focus on the big issues that our country's facing, not the least of which is in 2 weeks staring down a potential crippling tariff regime by the United States, the new United States administration. So relief that we're finally at the stage that we can get over the internal Liberal melodrama, but this should have happened a long time ago, and it's the responsibility of the current Prime Minister and the MLA or MPs and cabinet ministers around him that this has taken as long as it has.
Hannah, why are you relieved?
You know, I am just as grateful as I am for everything that the Prime Minister has accomplished, and that should not be understated. It has been a fantastic track record. I just think that him staying on to this point has been too distracting politically, and even just what was going on in Parliament, we weren't having a functional legislature passing legislation that Canadians desperately needed. So getting this out of the way, going through this leadership process, I think it will not only revigorate the Liberal Party, it will refocus us all on what matters, and that's what the Liberals have been focused on, and now we can all work together.
It's interesting because the analyst we had on early this morning said that one of the things that was notable to him was no matter how any other sort of political leader has left, there was no mention of legacy by the other parties yesterday. They were all moving forward. They didn't look to say anything. Usually there's a thank you for what, the 10 years that you've been there. But that was sort of missing. Like, we're right moving forward. Almost in election mode already, which makes sense, I guess. Erin, you said optimistic, right?
Optimistic because there are voters who traditionally vote Liberal who are not going to be able to do that this time. They've decided that this is not their Liberal Party, and they definitely aren't going to vote for the current Conservative that is too far right for them. So some of those folks will lend us their vote. So I'm looking forward to seeing us picking up some seats.
When you think about the question asked about Manitoba, what was the good or what was the bad? I'm going to be generous and let you guys pick what you want to answer of Manitoba and how we fared under Justin Trudeau. Brad?
I mean, I think that it's the concern that you hear from folks in the coffee shop with your colleague. This has been a prime minister who not that long after getting into office answered a question saying, I don't really think about, financial matters or monetary policy. That's not really something that's my focus. And I think that the financial circumstances that we find ourselves in, that Canadians and Manitobans find themselves in, is reflective of the fact that just was not a focus, not something that that was top of mind. We've seen this prime minister lose two credible finance ministers, Bill Morneau, Chrystia Freeland. These are people who could not go along with his agenda, and I think that that Manitobans and Canadians across the country are paying the consequences for that. So I think a missed decade of fiscal mismanagement is going to be his, unfortunately, his long-standing
Erin,
legacy.
What do you think in terms of Manitoba? What was the good and the bad of the Liberals governing under Trudeau for Manitoba?
The good was the coalition with the NDP. So the Liberals have had many, many years, many times in government to be able to do some of the things they did this time, but they only got it done when the NDP forced them on childcare, on dental coverage, on housing. So I think that was the best thing, is that they were forced to do some of the things that they've talked about, but we've always committed to.
Having said that, though, could that backfire in an election this year if people say, well, now the NDP need to distinguish themselves from the Liberals? And what does that look like? Where are those differentiation points in your view for your party?
I think one of the different points is that we actually get those things done. And I'm not worried about people confusing the NDP and the Liberal. Right now, people know who the Liberals are and they don't like them.
Hannah, what do you think? I'll give you the same thing. I was going to ask you just for the bad, but I'll be fair. What do you think the best thing that happened under the Liberals was under Trudeau, and where did they start to really lose it? Was it, as Brad said, this whole thing that he could never shake, which was he's a person of privilege and can't understand the average person, that's here in the prairies waking up in Manitoba today?
Well, I mean, talk about privilege. Some of the other leaders of these political parties are some of the most out of touch. Unfortunately, it does seem to come with the trade a little bit, so I don't think that is quite fair. I think what my fellow panelists might call have trouble with in terms of fiscal, I think that this government has made record investments in things like, specifically, we're talking about Manitoba, I mean the Churchill Rail. Right? Ask anyone in Churchill about the economic system and the economic situation up there. We've made record investments in that part of Manitoba. Child poverty. We had one of the highest rates of child poverty in the country. Last time I checked, we were at 750,000 children in Canada lifted out of poverty just with one policy from Justin Trudeau. That is astounding. You never mind childcare, Indigenous reconciliation, the most robust plan for climate change in history.
So you feel the record has something to be celebrated?
Absolutely.
On the points that aren't to be celebrated, where people really didn't like Trudeau, they don't think anyone's going to, be able to, in the next leader, whoever that is, of the Liberal Party, what do they have to do to differentiate themselves to convince Canadians that they are not more of the same?
I think a lot of it is a personal issue. Of course, no government is perfect. No one has ever claimed that. I think we can be proud of what the Liberals have done, but I think, like I was saying earlier, a lot of what the issue is with Justin Trudeau personally, and that has been a bit of a distraction. I'm not saying that any potential candidate wouldn't want to differentiate themselves, but I think they also need to be proud of what it means to be a Liberal, and I think that has maintained throughout his tenure before that, and it will maintain after.
So this is it's interesting because I think that there's we're kind of also in this moment where politics have changed so much that I wonder about all those differences. What does it mean to be a Liberal? What does it mean to be an NDP voter? What does it mean to be a Conservative? Now we know what it means to be a Conservative and a Liberal or an NDP, or you can see those differentiations. The question is are we in for a divisive election no matter what, like a really ugly, divisive moment? And I'll ask you this, Brad, because you're chairing the leadership race for the PCs. And I mean, already here it's been divisive in Manitoba. Party member Darren Penner was questioning why candidate Abicom was photographed with Justin Trudeau. So are we in you're with us or against us moment here? What do you think we're going to see federally?
as chair of the provincial race, I'm not going to comment on.
No, I'm not asking for that.
Fair
Yeah,
enough.
I understand.
I mean, politics is divisive, and campaigns are an opportunity for political candidates and parties to put out competing visions. I mean, to look at the polling number, this may arguably be one of the least divisive elections where a government leaves office. I mean, we're coming up on 2 years of the current government polling 15, 20 points behind. I mean, there is a large portion of this country from coast to coast to coast, and we're seeing it in places like Toronto that do want to change. So I do think there is a large number of Canadians who are rallying around what Pierre Poilievre is calling for, which is a new government.
Why is he right to be the next prime minister in your view?
I think I have been impressed with his call it laser focus on what I think are key issues. That includes housing. That includes inflation. I think there has been a tendency to look back from members of the other political parties. There was a time where maybe he played a bit more of an attack dog role and sort of what was a bit of played that role in the House. I've been very impressed since he became leader of the party.
You think he's changed?
I think he has. I think he has matured into the role, and I think that he has. I think in particular his focus on
these guys are making furious notes over here. By the way, I will get to you. I promise.
That's absolutely fine. I think in the time that he's been the leader of the party, his focus on issues that matter to Canadians, and again, you're hearing that from the voters, housing, inflation. I think that does show a level of maturity and a level of seriousness and understanding with the problems that
a lot of people
Canadians
writing in, feeling that they connect with them. I think Corey was mentioning a man who's saying, he's going to he's voting for Poilievre. He trusts some of his fiscal policies, which continue to come up.
I think also, just an understanding of the way that we communicate now. I mean, I think he's been doing that effectively in a way that the current.
What do you mean by that?
I think his ability to connect with people on social media and understand how that tool can be used. I mean, it's important. That's how we communicate today, and I think he's been very effective at doing that.
So you guys have been dying to get in. So I'll go to Erin first here. What are you thinking as you're thinking about leadership? And also, obviously, the Conservatives right now, I mean, if there was an election tomorrow, they would overwhelmingly win by the polls, at least, right? So what are your thoughts?
I think the polls sometimes reflect that people are angry at their current government, but when they actually start to think about who they're going to vote for, do they want to vote for Trump Jr.? No, I don't think so. And they know they're not happy with this Liberal government. So I think we're in a good place right now.
Is it fair to call him Trump Jr.? How's that sitting with you, Brad?
It doesn't sit very well with me, and I don't think it is. I mean, this is a leader in a party that's on issues like Ukraine stood steadfast with the efforts in Ukraine. On any number of social issues, there's not alignment between sort of what you'd call the mega base and where Pierre Poilievre is. So I don't think that's fair. But I think what we do need in this country is a leader who has a mandate from the people and who can stand up to Donald Trump in the face of these 25% tariffs. And what we're left with now, as we enter a 3-month leadership race, is a period where we have a lame duck prime minister and a government that will not be focused on addressing what is one of, if not the largest economic challenges this country has potentially ever faced. And that's down to Justin Trudeau's ego and the Liberal Party for putting us in this position at this late stage. We should be all hands on deck, getting ready to deal with the incoming Donald Trump administration.
And I know you're worried about the states. You were tweeting about that as well. I was noticing retweeting about that. That's top of mind for you.
Should be for all Canadians, I think.
I do want to get to the race itself, because I know that Hannah, you have said, and I'll ask Erin, both of you this. You've talked about some potentials. You said you don't have a clear person that you would be looking for to leader, but I mean, obviously Jolie's name, Chrystia Freeland's name coming up. I'm asking about this to both of you because there's the whole glass cliff thing, that when a woman gets in leadership, it's when something is in a moment of crisis. And I wonder whether or not that's something that you're thinking about for the Liberals right now. And then I'll go to you, Erin.
I think that is an issue that we have in society. I mean, look at Kim Campbell with the Conservatives back in the day. That was a pretty classic case of...
Some could argue Heather Stephenson here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I made that argument when it happened. I think that's absolutely something. But when we're talking about some of the talent, like Chrystia Freeland, like Anita Anand, like Melanie Joly, I think that they are more than competent. I think they are extraordinary. They would be extraordinary leaders. And I think any single one of them have the talent and the focus to take on Pierre Poilievre, who I agree is a threat to our country. I mean, we talk about maturity and seriousness, but anybody can come up with 3-word slogans, right? It's easy. Alliteration is fun. Petulant Pierre. See, right? Like, it's easy. But we need to have a grown-up in the room, and I just don't see that being Pierre Poilievre. I think he's divisive. I think he's been nasty at times. I don't think that's gone away, and that's something that scares me, and I think any one of the candidates or potential candidates can handle that easily.
I knew we ran out the clock, so Erin, you're getting the last 30 seconds here. And, why is your party the one to lead Canada? Or if you want to weigh in on the glass cliff, I'm going to let you weigh in on whatever you want.
I'll weigh in on both. Why are we the party? Because everything that Justin Trudeau is claiming as his legacy is the stuff he did because he was forced to by our party. The NDP are the one that made that happen. In terms of women coming in as leaders when the party is doomed, you're right, Marcy, that's been the history in Canada. Party politics aside, I would really like to see that change.
Thank you all for being here. Obviously, it's not the last time we'll all be together talking. Appreciate it. Brad, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Erin, Hannah, thank you.
My pleasure.
Well, that's our partisan panel. Now, as always, this is about you. It's about Canada. It's about Manitoba. It's about our country. It's about our province. It's about what you're thinking. And so if you want to weigh in at any point on anything, I always give the same phone number out, and it is 204-788-3205 if you want to weigh in after hearing, of course, today's podcast especially. Or you can comment in the comment section. Don't forget to like and share on This is Manitoba.